So, thank you for listening to me today. I've recorded this and uploaded it to YouTube so that you can watch this asynchronously, you can speed it up, you can skip over sections, you can repeat the bits that you've missed, you can do all of the things that come with video recording and leaning into async, right? And obviously if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. So I want to talk about all Pajamas migrations. These are the OKRs we've been setting for a while now, and there's a definite feeling of migration fatigue. It's something I can totally empathise with. I get it. I was an EM in Verify very recently, and we also were given these migration KRs, and I felt that frustration. But we leaned into these, and we did a few migrations, and we used more and more of GitLab UI, and we quickly realised like how important these migrations are and what they can do for us. So now that I am the EM for Foundations, these migrations fall to me. And my hope today is that I can show you all why they're important and get you, your EMs and your engineers as excited about these as I am and to understand the importance of them. So we've been doing these for a couple of years. We've made a lot of progress. When I created this slide, we had migrated 1,813. This is probably higher because it's currently Pajamas Migration Day. But we're about 80% of the way through. And as we all know, that's the easy 80%. We've got the difficult 20% to go. And we're starting to look at the more difficult to migrate components now. And this is why we're directing people to drop downs at the minute and why we're asking for one per engineer. Because I want as many engineers to look at this as possible so that they're familiar with GitLab UI, they're familiar with these migrations. Before we dig in, I am mentioning GitLab UI a lot here. These migrations are technically Pajamas migrations. They're not the same thing. So Pajamas is our design system. It's maintained by a UX team. It's a set of rules and guidelines about how to design, use and interact with GitLab. And the goal of these migrations is to make GitLab more Pajamas compliant, so to adhere to these rules and guidelines. What GitLab UI is a series of Pajamas compliant components. Also, there are two types of Vue components that we have. There are Vue components and there are Vue components. And the naming on this is horrendous. So Vue, V-U-E, they're JavaScript based and they are built in Vue. This is what GitLab UI is. And Vue components, V-I-E-W, they're Ruby based and they're built in Rails. These aren't our names. These are just what they're called. And unfortunately, they're very, very similarly named. But basically, always reach for the Vue components unless it doesn't make sense to convert an entire page into JavaScript. Then we have Vue components, the Ruby ones, and these are helpers that are also Pajamas compliant. So you can use them in your Rails and Haml views when migrating to JavaScript. It doesn't make sense. They're slightly less useful. They're not as good as the JavaScript components, but they're a good alternative. So things you get for free when migrating to GitLab UI. You don't just get the usability and the visual improvements and all that sort of stuff. Like, they're great, but in my opinion, they're lovely side effects to the real power of GitLab UI and componentization, right? So you get security built in for free. You get performance built in for free. You get reliability, accessibility, usability and maintainability all built in for free. Oh, and efficiency as well. I forgot that one. There we go. You get a lot built in for free. You get all of these things when you use them components, and over time all of these things get progressively better in GitLab UI, and all of them improvements bubble out to your areas of the code base as well. So if you're using GitLab UI to build your features, then your page will become more secure, performant, reliable, accessible, usable, and maintainable over time. A good example of this is with security. So in August last year, we had a good number of security issues. This is the chart of just open front-end security issues. You can see the issues start to increase around October, November time, and then they start to drop off around March, April. And this is because we shipped some security fixes to GitLab UI. And because we shipped them to GitLab UI, everywhere in the code base that was using them got these security fixes for free, which brought us all the way down to a much more manageable level, and we've stayed there since. So these were improvements that Dirage made. Like, thank you for Dirage for doing these. He's tightened up our DOM Purify setup. He's improved sanitization. He's prevented the rendering of unsafe HTML. And as I said, because he made these in GitLab UI, all of these fixes rolled out to a big chunk of the code base. And because GitLab UI is in one central place, he doesn't have to seek out all the vulnerable areas of GitLab. He can just improve it in GitLab UI, knowing that that'll have the most impact on the rest of the code base. Because when you use GitLab UI, security comes for free. There's also performance, right? That's another important aspect of our front end. It's something we've been making improvements to over time, and GitLab UI helps with this in two ways. So firstly, bundle sizes. Front-end development is a dependency nightmare, and every dependency you include on the front end gets shipped to the user in their browser. We have jQuery, Bootstrap, Dropper, Select2, and all sorts more. And a lot of these do the same thing, or very, very similar things. Drop-downs, the ones that we're trying to migrate at the minute, they're a good example of these. So those dependencies that I listed earlier, Dropper, Select2, etc., they're all just libraries we use for drop-downs. And if we migrate everything that's using these libraries over to GitLab UI, then we cut down all of our dependencies, and the less dependencies we have, the smaller the bundle size, the less code we send to our users, and the better the performance of GitLab generally. The other way that the GitLab UI improves performance is just with the performance of the components themselves, and some of the tricks that GitLab UI utilize to render things a little bit faster. You get these for free, right? So if we look at the LCP for the pages in Verify from April last year, you see they weren't great. LCP is the largest contentful paint. This is what we were measuring at the time, and this is basically how long it takes to render the most important thing on the page. And you can see that the times here range all the way from 1.5, 1.6 seconds up to over 10 seconds, which is not good. that's really not good. We did improve this, and this is what the chart looks like now. It's a lot better. We've gone from 10 seconds to 5 seconds, which is still not good, but it's a hell of an improvement. But that's not really what I want to talk about at the minute. I want to specifically call out the verified job list. This went from taking 3 seconds to load all the way down to half a second. A little over half a second, but half a second, right? It's about a 600% decrease in loading time. We could do this because, as you may guess, we migrated this page from a HAML view to using Vue and using GitLab UI. Because with GitLab UI, performance improvements come for free. Now, we've looked at security, we've looked at performance. I mentioned accessibility, reliability, all the other LEs. There are similar stories for all of these, but I think you get the point. You get a lot for free with GitLab UI. It makes things a lot easier. It makes things a lot quicker. Because when you use GitLab UI, you can focus on the features and you can let GitLab UI do the rest. This is exactly what Payne did when he built the new jobs list page, the one that had all the speed increases from last time. So he was tasked with adding filters to the job list. So this page just used to be a list of jobs. This is what it was when we took the first benchmark. So there's actually more going on the page now, and it renders a lot quicker. And currently this list was in HAML. So he had two options. He could leave the list in HAML, add the filter, hook them up somehow, go from there. Or he could migrate the entire thing to Vue, take that list, rewrite it in Vue, and then have the filter bar and the list using the same data store, essentially. Now, migrating it to Vue is the better option. It would yield a better result. It would be Pajamas compliant. It would have a better user experience. And it would make it a lot easier to add, develop, and fix things on this page in the future. However, it would involve an entire rewrite. So he would need to create the components for the list, the items in the list, and the elements within those items. You'd then have to deal with fetching data, paginating that data, updating that list. He'd then have to solve all of the problems that come along with this, with security, with accessibility, with performance. He'd need to make sure he handled empty states, error states, loading states. He'd have to ensure the CSS was written correctly and was Pajamas compliant. So there's a lot of work, and something that realistically he wouldn't have been able to do within the time that he needed to be able to ship this filter bar on time. However, if he used GitLab UI, which he did, he didn't need to worry about as much of this. A lot of this stuff came for free. So he used GLTable to render the list. This took care of the layout, the accessibility, all the various states, all for free. He just needs to plug in the data. He used GL intersection observer to add infinite scrolling to that same table with just a few lines of code. He used GL sprintf to handle internationalization, GL link for safe, secure link rendering, and all sorts of other things. There's more going on here. It's overly simplified, but you can see how nice this code is, right? This intersection observer here from line 14 to 19 is everything he needed to fetch more jobs and keep the thing infinitely scrolling. The skeleton loader, similar story. Jobs table, that's a separate component in itself, but within that there's a GL table component that just says, here's what my data needs to look like, do everything that the table needs to do. And by taking this approach, Ping could roll out the feature, refactor a neglected area of our code base, and improve security, accessibility, reliability, usability, all of these things. And as we saw earlier, the performance, it was so much better because he focused on the feature and he let GitLab UI take care of the rest. So what's in it for me? Why should I care about GitLab UI migrations, or why should you care about GitLab UI migrations? Well, as I mentioned before, it's about all the things you get for free. You get security, usability, performance, efficiency, reliability, maintainability, and accessibility, all built in, all for free. You use GitLab UI, your area of the code base is much better in all these aspects. I want people to start migrating more areas of our code base to use GitLab UI, not because we're telling them to, but because they see the benefits and they want to reap the rewards. When we get to that point, then we will have no more migration OKRs. I don't want to keep doing these forever. I don't want to keep telling people to do these. I'm sure you don't want to keep getting these OKRs. So the more we migrate, the less we need these OKRs. Let's push on. Let's get these drop downs done. Let's give each engineer an opportunity to interact with GitLab UI and do one of these drop down migrations. And let's use the feedback from these interactions to improve GitLab UI. And then we can use them improvements to make GitLab more usable, performant, secure, accessible, reliable, and everything else. Thank you for listening. There's some links here to some more. And as I said, send any questions my way.